What's up, guys? Today we're making picks for UFC 234 Whittaker versus Gastelum. For a pay-per-view, this is a very weak card in my opinion. We have the main event being Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum, the co-main event being Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, which in my opinion isn't even going to be a competitive fight. And the remainder of the card, while there's some interesting matchups, it's very, very low in star power. Casual fans are going to have no idea who any of these people are, and so just rather weak, especially for a pay-per-view. Anyway, let's just get right into it. So we're going to start off here with Jalin Turner versus Callan Potter. So Callan Potter is coming in here on short notice. He's very tall for the division. I believe he's 6'1", and he's fought at welterweight, so he's fairly large for the division as well. He's very, very good at jiu-jitsu. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's won multiple titles in Australian organizations at both lightweight as well as welterweight. He uses pressure quite a bit, so guys that struggle with pressure are kind of doomed, to be honest. Your only real chance is if you can deal with the takedown. If you can stop the takedown, then you got a shot, but if he takes you to the mat, you're pretty much screwed. He's a very high-level black belt. He's an exciting fighter as well. He always goes for the finish. I believe he has 24 fights, and I'm pretty sure 23 of them have been finished inside the distance. So he only has one decision on his entire record, which is insane. But I feel while he doesn't use his reach very much, he's gonna, maybe for the first time in his career, have a fairly significant reach disadvantage because he's fighting Jalin Turner here, who's absolutely enormous for the weight class. Massive frame. He's a great striker. He's also a finisher like Potter, albeit by knockout instead of submission. Very fast. He has a kickboxing background. He uses reach very well, which is extremely important here because one, he doesn't want Potter to get a hold of him. If Potter gets a hold of him and takes him down, he's in trouble. Turner is well-rounded, however. He's got good wrestling. He's shown the ability to sprawl very, very well and to use his length to prevent takedowns. So that should be crucial here, and I think that's going to allow him to keep it standing. And on the feet, I just see Turner just completely dismantling him. Much faster, hits harder, younger, more athletic, longer reach. He just has all the advantages going for him. Kickboxing experience. And I just see him being able to keep it out of the clinch or get out of the clinch when it gets into the clinch. And I don't really see there being takedowns. And if Potter can't get a takedown, I think this is just going to be Turner wrecking him on the feet. So I got Turner here. Next fight up, we got Lando Vannata versus Marcos Rosa. Vannata needs a win here. He's been on this streak of losses and draws. He's had 2 draws fairly recently, which is rather abnormal, I guess you'd say. UFC, especially the judges in the UFC, they never give out draws. So the fact that Vannata has had 2 in the last maybe year, if not year and a half, is pretty crazy. And the other thing about draws in the UFC is they don't get rewarded at all. The only time you see like any appreciation for them really is in title fights. So looking at like Stephen Thompson versus Tyron Woodley, that ups both of their stock in that they are both seen to be extremely talented, and the fact that it was that evenly matched, it doesn't hurt either of them, and it almost helps them because I thought it was an exciting fight. I guess some people didn't. So if you didn't appreciate the fight, then maybe you don't agree with that. But anyway, Vannata's opponent here, Marcos Rosa, is a nobody. I think he's just kind of being brought into slaughter pretty much. They're trying to kind of get Vannata going again here. He's just signed a 4-fight deal, so they obviously aren't trying to cut him even though he's had tough luck as of late. But Marcos Rosa, he's very long for the weight class, which could cause problems. He has a 4-inch reach advantage here, and then he also has very long legs, so using kicks and punches to keep distance could cause problems for Vannata here. But I feel that Vannata is just way, way more well-rounded. There's not a lot of footage on Marcos Rosa, But when he gets taken down, he has no idea what he's doing, which is odd because he's Brazilian. It's just kind of like the stereotypical. You think he's going to know what he's doing, but he doesn't. Terrible wrestling. Vannata's going to have a big advantage in the clinch as well. Just the experience and being so much more well-rounded. Training out of Jackson Wink, all of those guys know how to grapple. I just see Vannata being able to dominate here. And Rosa, basically, it's a setup fight. It's a setup fight for Vannata to get back on track, get some confidence going, and hopefully get back in the mix. I feel like that's what the UFC's hoping for anyway. So I got Vannata here. Next fight up, we got Kang versus Teruto Ishihara. Same kind of thing, realistically. Setup fight. I see Kang or Kong. I've seen it pronounced both ways. We'll go with Kang here. He's just going to dominate him. He showed in his against Ricardo Ramos. He's very, very well-rounded. An extremely good wrestler. Pretty damn good on the ground as well. And he's a great striker. He's just extremely well-rounded. He's absolutely enormous for this weight class. All the South Koreans, we'll see another one later on this card, but all South Koreans in the UFC, these guys just seem to cut unbelievable amounts of weight and are just always the bigger guy in the octagon. So yeah, no, I don't see Ishihara really having a chance here. Ishihara lost 4 of his last 5 fights. One of them was to Artem Lobov, and you can call him the GOAT all you want. Artem is not a very good fighter. I believe he's below 500 now. He's lost more fights than he's won, which is terrible to even think he was in the UFC. We all know why. It's because of Conor McGregor. But nonetheless, like, terrible record. Ishihara, while he's a smaller guy, he's fighting at bantamweight here, a division down from where he fought Artem. He shouldn't be losing to Artem if you're in the UFC. So Ishihara, I don't even see why he's still in the UFC. And Kang, as an up-and-comer, I have a bet on him here. I forget what it is. The site in which I track my bets, third-party track bets, will be in the description down below if you want to see my exact bets. But yeah, bet on Kang here. I think it's going to be very, very easy. He's going to be significantly bigger. He might not be faster, but he's more skilled everywhere. So I got Kang here. Next up, we have Kai Kara France versus Raulian Paiva. This fight's at flyweight, so these guys could be cut fairly soon, which is unfortunate. However, it potentially is a showcase fight for Kara France here, so it could be a fun one. The crowd's definitely going to be into this one. But Kai Kara France, so he trains out of City Kickboxing with guys like Israel Adesanya, Shane Young, Dan Hooker, etc. So great team out there. Fairly local as well. New Zealand, obviously a different country, a few-hour plane ride away. But fairly close for what those guys are used to in terms of traveling like halfway across the world for fights. So that's good for him. He's a very good striker, as all the guys are out of that team, pretty much. He's really tough. He has a lot of heart. In his last fight against, what was his name? Last name was Garcia. Not his last, I think it was his last fight. Anyway, against a guy named something Garcia, who was fighting out of Duke Rufus, was a very grappling heavy fighter. Kara France was in some really, really tough positions. Like positions tough enough that a lot of different fighters would have quit. But he toughed it out. He has very, very good submission defense, and he's good on the ground, but I think where he really shines is that submission defense. Now, his opponent here, Raulian Paiva, he's very good on the ground, so could be interesting, could be kind of close to that last fight. However, Paiva is much, much better on the feet than Garcia was. So yeah, very good technical grappler. He had a fight on the Contender Series where they were both very high-level grapplers, and the whole fight was basically just a grappling match. Grappling, wrestling, the guys were rolling all over the place, and it's extremely high level. So it was a pretty fun fight to watch, especially if you're somebody who's like learning jiu-jitsu or wrestling or anything like that. It's a fun fight to watch and learn from. So great fight there. He has decent takedown defense. He's also very, very tough. He has a very strong jab, and I believe he'll have the reach advantage here. I'm not entirely sure. He's definitely taller than Kara France is. But I just see Kara France winning this fight because of the home crowd, because he wants it more, because he's tough. I think he's a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and I really just think he's going to want it more. Paiva, 17 or 18-1 record, depending on where you look. So extremely impressive record. Question being, how high is the level of competition? I'd definitely say Kai has faced a higher level competition, but if you look at the record, 17-7 versus arguably 18-1, big difference there. I have Kai Kara-France winning this fight. However, I completely disagree with the betting line. Let me just check what it is right here, right now. It is minus 320. Okay, so it's even crazier than it was before. Minus 320 and Paiva is plus 260. I would have thought Kara-France would have been about like between minus 150 and minus 200. Minus 320 is crazy. I'd say there's value on Paiva there. But I got Kara-France for the win because we're not talking about who I'm betting on. We're talking about who's going to win. Next fight up, we have Shane Young versus Austin Arnett. This is another one which I greatly disagree with the betting line, which I'll get to at the end of this. So Shane Young, another one of these guys fighting out of City Kickboxing with all those high-level guys, great gym out there. He's talked about having some mental health issues as of late. Don't know if that's going to factor into this fight. I kind of worry that he's had mental health issues, and then he saw, oh, there's this fight in Australia so close to home, or event rather, and it's a big card, UFC 234, although it hasn't shaped up that well. But he would have chosen to be on it, even though maybe he's still having a little bit of issues mentally. But we'll see. He's a tough guy, so I feel like he'll be able to push through that. Very well-rounded. He's a pressure fighter. The only fight I've ever seen him not be pressured in was against Alexander Volkanovski, and as we all know, that's a bit of a different ball game. Arguably second best guy in the whole division, so no shame there. Shane Young, he has good head movement. His boxing fundamentals are pretty good. He hits very hard. He's got good leg kicks. All the guys out of that gym have very high-level kickboxing for the most part. I've never seen anybody who doesn't, at least that I've heard of. He's extremely durable. So as I was just talking about mental health issues, this guy he's really tough. He doesn't seem like he has any problems mentally. Like, he'll push through everything. As I said, extremely durable. He was fighting Orlando D, I believe it was, and or whatever his first name was, doesn't matter. The Filipino guy, extremely fast, way faster than Shane Young was, and it didn't bother Shane at all. He was getting popped with the jab, he was getting hit with hooks. I believe he even got, if not dropped, then stunned at one point, and just continues to walk forward. Nothing seems to bother him. I would say extremely mentally tough, regardless of what we've heard lately. And he's fighting Austin Arnett here. And I would honestly say Austin Arnett has the skills to beat Shane Young without question. But I think it's him who has the mental problems, with regards to fighting at least. There's nothing wrong with like backing down from a fight if you're going to get your ass beat. But Arnett seems to struggle in certain situations. In this particular matchup, though, he's taller than Shane Young. I wouldn't say he's more well-rounded. They're both very well-rounded. He trains out of Washington with guys like Michael Chiesa, so he's got some pretty good training partners. Should be improving his ground game quite a bit, which has been an area where he's struggled just a little bit in the past. He finally got a win in the UFC, so that should give him some confidence here. He was on a losing streak, yet he was still in the UFC. And then I think the guy that they brought in his last fight, I forgot his name. Let me just check quickly. Bandone. Yeah, so his last fight against Bandone, I honestly feel like they were bringing him in to lose. It was just like to get him cut and to kind of showcase Bandone, who was coming off a victory. He spoiled all of that. He basically outlasted Bandone. And I believe they both had full training camps for that fight, so there's no excuses with regards to that. But yeah, so Austin Arnett, very good cardio. Both these guys have extremely good cardio. The big difference I see here is speed. Austin Arnett's way, way faster than Shane Young is. He's got great kicking techniques. I believe he has a karate background, so that's kind of where his kicking game comes from. His punches are good as well. One of the problems I've noticed with him is when he's throwing combos, he'll kind of get out of stance and square up, and he's very open to counters. So that could be an issue here. But I kind of struggle to see Austin Arnett even getting off in the first place, because while Shane Young is significantly slower, he's a pressure guy, and Austin Arnett seems to be one of these guys who's very skilled but kind of wilts under pressure. So I could see that happening here. Just getting pressured against the cage like Shane Young loves to do. Shane will mix in the wrestling. And as I said, Austin Arnett's very well-rounded. He has wrestling. He has great cardio, has all this. But I think it's just a little bit in the head. I think he, that little bit of, not mental weakness, but folding under pressure a little bit. And I think Shane Young's going to exploit that. I think Shane Young's going to be even more after it than ever before because he's fighting at home, arguably from New Zealand. Or he might be from Australia, just training in New Zealand. He's in his home continent. And the fans there are crazy. Everybody's going to be chanting his name. And he's going to be pressuring the crap out of Austin Arnett. As I hinted at earlier, I think the line's way off for this. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that Austin Arnett wins this fight if he's confident. But that seems to be a big issue that he's been having. And with all the crowd chanting Shane Young, with Shane Young feeding off of the crowd, I kind of just see him wilting under the pressure. So if Austin Arnett completely clears up that mental issue he's got, I honestly see him winning. Very, very close to 50-50 fight if that's the case. And I would edge Arnett, but I just don't see it in Australia. I think Shane Young takes the win here. But again, the betting line is freaking insane. Minus 325 for Shane Young, plus 265 for Austin Arnett. I'm thinking about betting this fight, but I probably won't. I find it really hard to bet on somebody who I think is going to lose. So probably won't happen, but I do see value there. So Shane Young, he's the pick here, but the line's way off, and the line's getting worse by the day, so that's kind of insane. Austin Arnett could pull off the upset, but we're going with Shane Young here. All right, next up we have Devonte Smith versus Don Hyun Ma or Kim, depending on where you look. Obviously, everybody knows him as Don Hyun Kim, but they changed it to Don Hyun Ma. And there's a funny story. James Lynch, if you guys don't know him, he's a Canadian interviewer, journalist for MMA, follows or does journalism for the UFC, for Bellator, as well as other organizations. And his last interview that he did with Devonte Smith was pretty funny because Smith thought that he's fighting Don Hyun Kim, the welterweight. So I was kind of freaking out about that. Like what's going on here? Like, I'm a 55er. I'm not even as big as a bunch of other 55ers. And now you guys have me fighting a 170 pounder? Like, this is ridiculous. This guy's fought Tyron Woodley as well as others. And it was just a big mix-up because it was the other Don Hyun Kim. So this Don Hyun Kim, I don't know if he got married, changed his name. I have no idea what happened. But now he's Don Hyun Ma, so we're going to stick with that. So Don Hyun Ma, as all the South Koreans seem to be, is freaking huge. He's massive for this weight class. He might as well be a 170er, despite what Devonte Smith wants to believe, because he's a big dude. As I said before, all these Koreans just cut enormous amounts of weight, and he's no exception. He's a technical striker. People say he lacks defense. I don't know if I agree with that. He got into the that crazy brawl with Polo Reyes, but for the most part, he's got good head movement. He blocks fairly well. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's an experienced guy. You'd almost say he's a veteran at this point. That's kind of arguable, but he's a solid fighter overall. He's taken guys down. He's good in the clinch, and primarily he's a striker. So just very good fighter overall. No real weak points that I see. He's fighting Devonte Smith, who, for those of you who don't know, John Gunther, he was on one of the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. He's a very grapple-heavy fighter, and he's a funny dude because I don't know if he's just stupid or it's a character he plays or what's going on. I think it's just kind of who he is, which, no problem with that. Do you? But grapple-heavy guy, trains with Stipe, and basically wrestle-fucked Devonte Smith. Devonte Smith, though, if we're looking at who wins the fight, Devonte Smith won a fight in terms of damage. He beat the shit out of Gunther, but he kept getting taken down. The judges saw that as, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Because Gunther ended up finishing him, so with little like tippy tap hammer fist to the head, and they stopped it, which fair enough because Smith couldn't get out, and that seems to be Smith's weak point. So wrestling, any kind of grappling, jiu-jitsu, he's not great at. I don't think he's been doing MMA that long, and that's just one of his weak points that's very evident to me. Even in more recent fights, he's struggled when it goes to the ground, and it doesn't seem like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just not very well versed as of yet. A big thing here is the reach, because despite Dong Ma being significantly bigger, Smith is, well, I think he's going to be bigger. We're going to see. He's definitely going to be heavier. So Smith is going to have a 6-inch reach advantage, which is a lot. And especially when you look at Smith, he's listed at anywhere between 5'8" and 5'9", and his reach is 76 inches, which is 6'4". So that's kind of crazy. The only one crazier or equal to that I can think of at lightweight would be Kevin Lee, who's 5'9" with a 6'5" reach, which is 77 inches. So yeah, those guys got a big edge, at least if they can keep the distance. Smith, extremely fast, like probably the fastest guy in the entire lightweight division. Very athletic. As a result of that, he's very explosive, and I've seen him gas in past fights. So we'll see if he can last, basically. His cardio, like, I don't think his cardio is bad. It's just such explosive movements is how he fights, and as a result of that, you gas out. He is, however, fighting out of Factory X, which is in Colorado. So he's fighting he's training out of a camp that uses elevation to their advantage in hopes of improving their cardio. Trains with guys like Anthony Smith, which some people think is great. I don't think he's that good, but he's got some decent training partners at least. In his last Contender Series fight, or probably his only Contender Series fight, elbowed the crap out of an undefeated guy and just kind of beat the crap out of him in the whole fight. So it was very, very impressive there. Got a very fast knockout in his last fight. A lot of hype behind this guy. Another one that I think the line's a little bit off. I think he's like minus 250. Just a quick check here. Minus 245. Yeah, basically the same thing. Dong Hyun Ma is plus 205. I think there's value there. If you're looking for a bet on this card, I think that's not a bad one. I'm picking Devonte Smith to win, but if Dong Hyun Ma can use his experience, fight smart, which is something he's been lacking in the past, I think he can just outdo him in grappling. So if he can close the distance, get a hold of him, Dong Hyun Ma is very durable. Clinch up, I could see him getting a decision, potentially even submitting Smith. So we'll see how that one goes. Next up, we have Jimmy Crute versus Sam Alvey. This is yet another short notice fight for the tubby southpaw, Sam Alvey. The guy does not look like a fighter to me, at least not a light heavyweight or middleweight fighter. He's got some fat on him, that's for sure. But he steps in on short notice all the time, and we'll see how he does here. He's done pretty well with short notice fights in the past. So, Jimmy Crute, 22 years old, so very, very young. If you see him in interviews, though, he's very mature for his age, which makes you think he should fight mature, even though doesn't really. He's a power striker. He's extremely explosive. If you saw him in the Contender Series, that proved problematic because he gassed out right away. I think that was a lot of nervous energy, though. He trains with 3-time kickboxing world champion Sam Greco, so striking should be on point. Striking fundamentals are very, very good. One thing I notice is that his timing and his distance is a little bit off. He could just be trying to set stuff up, but his distance game, so guys, a good example is Anderson Silva in his prime for sure. Great, great distance control. Another one currently is Max Holloway. He always knows how far away he is and can get just out of the way of those shots. So Jimmy Crute, still evolving, not quite there yet, and seems to struggle a little bit with that distance game, as I said. He's a BJJ brown belt, and pretty damn good on the ground. His last fight was against Paul Craig and held his own, even bettered Paul Craig in some positions, and Craig's known as a ground fighter. He may not be the best fighter in the world, but his specialty is definitely on the ground, and Jimmy Crute was every bit as good, and in some cases better, than Paul Craig. He swept him a couple times. He just looked very, very good on the ground. So, well-rounded guy for sure. Very physically strong as well, and against a guy like Sam Alvey, he should have a huge power advantage here. Sam Alvey, as I said, the tubby southpaw, doesn't look like a fighter, doesn't look like he belongs. He's too happy to belong as well. Like, what are you doing, man? You're too happy. He's a very patient striker. He's often circling on the outside against bigger, stronger guys. So a good example of that is Vannata. Jim Crute fights fairly similar to that. And so I feel like it's going to be a similar fight where we're going to see Sam kind of circling around the outside. Sam does go forward at times for sure, but for the most part, he just circles on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see if Crute can take advantage of that and land something while he's circling either right or left. He's very good with high kicks, so if you can catch him with a high kick, that could be the end of the night for Sam. He does seem to lull people to sleep, though, Sam Alvey. He circling along the outside, not throwing anything, just being defensive, blocking shots, and then all of a sudden he throws the quick 1-2, and it catches people because they're just trying to catch him because he's just circling around the outside over and over and over again. And then they get bored, they get impatient, they come after him, and then he just cracks them. I feel like his power is a bit overrated. People are saying he's got great power. I don't really think so. I think he's more fast, more so than having serious power. But he only really throws that same one combination. He throws the 1-2 from the southpaw stance. Rarely see hooks. When you see hooks or uppercuts, it's because he's hurt the guy and he's going after him. His kicks, they're not great. He doesn't really flex his knee at all. He just kind of like circles his hip and kind of whips it at you. And so yeah, not the most effective kick. I don't really see him throw high kicks, at least not this late in his career. Yeah, I see Jimmy Crute basically just being too athletic for him. So I got Jimmy Crute here. Next up, we got Montana De La Rosa versus Nadia Kassem, or whatever the hell her name is. Montana, she's improved a lot. I believe she was on The Ultimate Fighter, if my memory serves me correct. She was a 3-time high school All-American, so a decorated wrestler, but it confuses me at times because you see girls that have wrestling backgrounds, and then it's like, how the hell were they successful at wrestling? And honestly, Montana is one of those people. It just didn't translate very well to MMA. Girls like Sarah McMahon's a great example. Obviously, that's a higher level wrestling, but like I can see you're a fantastic wrestler. When I look at Montana De La Rosa, it's like, you're okay. It looks like you just kind of learned a couple days ago. Like, it's nothing really impressed me about it at all, to be honest. She holds on to legs longer, tries harder to get people down, but isn't showing any skill like guys like, obviously, again, I'm going back to really high-level male athletes like Daniel Cormier, who has all these like little tricks with like hip tosses or little trips that people don't see coming. He has all these like little tricks up his sleeve, and De La Rosa doesn't have any of that. It's just kind of like, hopefully I grind you out and can take you down, and it's like, it's a terrible entry. I don't know. Women's MMA confuses me sometimes. She's a BJJ purple belt. She's pretty good on the ground. She's very big for the weight class, very long as well. Has I think it's a 68 or 69 inch reach. So pretty long for the weight class. Looks huge in some cases. Like, she's definitely big on average for the weight class, but like when she's fighting girls like Rachel Ostovich, looks humongous. Yeah, so as I said, good on the ground. A good wrestler, not as impressed as I was expecting to be with her wrestling, but a solid wrestler nonetheless. And she's fighting Nadia Kassem here, who should be a strawweight, didn't make weight. Now she's fighting a girl that's going to be way bigger than her. Her last fight was Alex Chambers. Everybody hates on Alex Chambers because she has a 500 record and she's 40 years old and all the rest of it. She's not a bad fighter. Like, I'm somewhat impressed with her in certain situations. She's definitely a dog in there. Like, she'll go after you, and she keeps going forward even when she's getting hit. Okay, stand up, really excels in the grappling, and that kind of, it looked to me like it proved too much for Kassem in that fight, or Kassem, I still have no idea how to say it. We'll go with Nadia. And so yeah, I thought that was a very close fight. I think people are saying, oh, Nadia sucks as a result of that fight, but I think Alex Chambers is pretty underrated. She struggled to get up in that fight. Chambers was able to hold her down quite well. Nadia has very good kicks. Shows signs of being a good kickboxer, but doesn't really show signs of any experience because she doesn't have much experience. So when she's in tough situations, she doesn't really know how to get out of them. Montana has more experience here. She's bigger. I don't think she's a great fighter, but I think she wins here. And once more, this is a fight that, for me, it's not hard to pick based off of like what you know about them, but when you just watch them fight, it's like, who the hell knows is gonna win. And Montana's a minus 265 favorite, which again I think is just a little bit too much, but I wouldn't bet this fight regardless. I mean, I don't know, I struggle betting them in MMA, so I wouldn't bet it, but you guys do whatever the hell you want. Next up, Rani Yahya versus Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone, a guy who looks like a good wrestler, unlike the last person, unlike Montana there. He's a grinder. He's got great cardio. He's a pressure fighter. He never gets tired. He had that fight against, what's his name? Marab something or other, where he kind of gassed out, but there was like some weird things going on with his training camp that time around. He just had a fight beforehand, and then he had a fight like not a week later, but like he didn't have a break in between training camps, and it looked like it really affected him in that fight. That's a really interesting fight to watch, very controversial fight, because Marab was, in my opinion, winning pretty much the whole fight. He was getting takedowns on Ricky, which is interesting given that Ricky's seems to be, in most of his fights, a pretty good wrestler. And yeah, outstriking him. And then we go down to the last minute of the fight. So last minute, third round, and Simone gets him in a guillotine. And Marab doesn't look like he has a clue how to defend it, which, not that it's easy to defend, and he was like flattened on the ground, like it's a really tough position. And he was kicking his legs, squirming around, and then he stopped. And everybody thought he was out. And then the ref goes, picks up his arm, drops it, and it drops, and then he starts kicking again. So it's like he reawoke. So now he's back conscious, and then he would go out, and then he'd come back, and then he'd go out, and then he'd come back. And it was madness that the ref wasn't stopping it, because he wasn't going to tap, which is his decision, but the guy was like in and out of consciousness. It was very strange. It was pretty crazy. But the ref never really thought he was unconscious, I guess, because he would kick, and then he'd stop, and then he'd kick again, and anyway, it was madness. And then they ruled it, it went the full distance, and they ruled it a Simone win by TKO because he was unconscious after he let go, even though he made it the whole time. So the fight was over, the ref never stopped it, yet they took the win away from that guy. So anyway, that was bullshit. But anyway, so Ricky Simone, pretty well-rounded. Struggled a little bit against Montel Jackson in his last fight, but Montel Jackson is a very skilled fighter, a very athletically gifted guy, and just a big dude. Rani Yahya here has been around a long time, unbelievable on the ground. He's a 3-time world champion in jiu-jitsu. He's like the Damian Maia of the bantamweight division. You do not want to go to the ground with this guy. He has all kinds of positions that you've never even seen before. It's like, what the hell is even going on here? And then it's like, oh shit, he's setting up a submission, but you don't know where it's coming from. He's just unbelievable on the ground. So don't go to the ground with that guy. This is a very close fight odds-wise, and I think that's rightfully so. Hard one to call. I think that the difference maker is going to be Ricky Simone's questionable wrestling, but I don't think it's going to be that questionable here. I see him stuffing takedowns and being more athletic and just a better striker on the feet. And Yahya kind of doing what Damian Maia does when he can't get it to the ground. He just keeps trying. So he's going to keep trying. He's going to go for takedowns. He's going to exhaust himself. And then come the third round, he's going to be completely gassed out if he can't get those takedowns. And then it's just going to be getting teed off on. So if Yahya can get him to the ground, he's got a great chance of submitting him. I think the wrestling of Simone is going to be too much, but this fight could really go either way. My pick here is Simone. Next up, we have the co-main event of the evening. So Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, I'd say, is my second favorite fighter ever behind Cormier. Absolutely loved watching him. He was just magical in his prime. Just unbelievable what the guy could do. Had that aura of invincibility. Looked like guys were defeated before they even got in there. Just an unbelievable fighter. Very, very well-rounded. I'd say his only weak part of his game was his wrestling, which he never used. Great on the ground, great in the clinch, and arguably one of the best stand-up fighters in UFC history. So, Anderson Silva, as I kind of just hinted at, I'd say he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. He has a huge advantage here on the ground. Just all that experience in jiu-jitsu. I don't know for sure, but he must be a jiu-jitsu black belt at this point in time. Adesanya is still fairly new to the ground game. So if it goes there, Anderson's going to have a huge advantage. He's going to have a big advantage in the clinch. We've all seen what he's done to guys like Rich Franklin twice in a row. Just destroyed him in the tie clinch. Obviously, guys have come up with a defense for that since then, but Anderson Silva's clinch game is still one of the best there is, even at 43 years of age. However, age is a real thing. Age is a real factor, especially when you're in a fight. Israel Adesanya, I think he's like 30, 29 or 30. Well, whenever this loads, which is not looking like it's gonna. Here we go. He is 29. So, Israel Adesanya, 29 years old. I think he's just entering his prime because he's still so new to MMA. I still think he's gonna get better. He's still improving. Obviously skill-wise, and I think he's going to be able to keep up that athletic ability for a little while longer. The guy is a freak, honestly. Extremely, he's so good stand-up-wise. And I think one of the things that makes Adesanya special is what made Silva so special. And that's the ability to stay calm in terrible situations. So you see Anderson on the ground against guys like Dan Henderson, against big ones against like Chael Sonnen when he's on his back, getting his ass beat for 4 rounds of the fight, and he's still so calm. He's still looking for ways to win. There's never a thought of quitting, but more so than that, he's not freaking out at all despite getting his ass beat. He's completely there. As long as he's conscious, he's looking for a way to win, and he's never freaking out. He's always there, and he's always dangerous. And Adesanya's the same way, especially standing up. The most calm guy I've ever seen standing up. Just looks like he's having fun out there, and he uses his reach to keep guys away. Extremely accurate. Great kicks, great boxing, great kickboxing. We've all heard how accomplished he is at kickboxing. As a result of the kickboxing, though, his chin has deteriorated more than some people may think. He's been knocked out a number of times, and that's definitely a danger here. And one of the reasons I believe it's a danger is because I believe Adesanya is going to be so confident once he realizes he has a huge speed advantage here. And I don't see this fight going to the ground because, as I said, the one weak area for Anderson Silva is wrestling. Adesanya, not a great wrestler, but not a bad one either. Certainly improved a lot between fights in the area of wrestling, and I don't see Anderson being able to take him down, and he might start to get desperate here. I think Adesanya is going to have his way on the feet. I think it's going to be fairly easy, just that speed advantage. And yeah, I just think he's just kind of better at this point in their career. The one danger being the chin issues, the weak chin, and that becomes more of a danger if Adesanya starts playing with him a little bit, which I honestly see him doing a little bit here, having some fun with him, There'll probably be like some moments where they're doing like high fives and stuff, because Anderson was, if not an idol, definitely somebody that Adesanya looked up to, and just that playing with him a little bit too much could get dangerous. But I see this being an easy fight for Adesanya. Too much youth on his side, too fast, too comfortable in there. The wrestling's going to keep it on the feet. I think Anderson's best chance is in the clinch, and I think he's going to have an extremely hard time getting it there with a guy with a reach advantage on him and the style that Adesanya has. So I'm going style bender for the win here, and I don't see it being a very close fight. Also have a bet on this fight, and as I said before, if you want to see the exact bet, it'll be in the description down below on a company called Bet Tips MMA. So, moving on to the main event. Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. A lot of people think this is going to be a very close fight. Style-wise, it should be. But I see one of these guys just being significantly more well-rounded, and that being the difference maker here. So, Kelvin Gastelum, great boxer, extremely fast. Put guys like Bisping down, knocked down Chris Weidman, was looking really good in that fight. However, another thing that happened in that fight is Kelvin was really calm, and as I just said about Israel Adesanya, very, very calm, but the right amount. Kelvin was too calm to the point that he was getting taken down and just was kind of like relaxed even off his back, which is fine if you're great off your back, but Kelvin's no like Yahya, like he's not that level. He's not Damian Maia, and he was just too relaxed, getting his guard passed, and it proved to be his demise in that fight. He has a big, not speed advantage in this fight, but he's very, very fast in the division. I think that just comes with being smaller. He's pretty small for this weight class. So I do see him being faster than Whittaker. Maybe not a lot, but I see him being faster. The 1-2, the left down the pipe, as he says, is very, very dangerous, and he's knocked a lot of guys down with it. A lot of very, very high-level guys like Jacare, like Weidman, and others. He was a wrestler, so I think it's interesting, and he's not a kick-heavy guy either. So I find it interesting that he does get taken down so easily. The main fight you see that was against Chris Weidman, who's obviously an extremely accomplished wrestler. So a lot of people are like, well, that's never going to happen in this fight. Like, he's not getting taken down by a striker like Whittaker. People don't seem to understand how well-rounded Robert Whittaker is. They seem to be distracted by the fact that he was going up against a wrestler like Yoel, and he's like, was doing really well with takedown defense against Yoel, but there's like, oh, there's no way he could take Yoel down. Probably not. I mean, Yoel is just a freak athlete, soldier of steroids. The guy shouldn't be in the UFC in my opinion, but that's beside the point. Robert Whittaker is an extremely good, talented wrestler, and people don't see that. Takedown defense against Jacare Souza made it look extremely easy. He turned down a spot on the Australian Olympic wrestling team because he was rehabbing his knee and he thought it would get in the way of fighting for the UFC. But he's like national, if not Olympic level at wrestling. Like, he's extremely good at wrestling, and I think that's a really, really big X factor in this fight, because I don't think Calvin's really going to be expecting that. And if he takes him down, Whittaker's very good on the ground. Again, I think he's a little bit underrated with jiu-jitsu, and I could see him taking him down and beating the shit out of Calvin and ending it that way. On the feet, this is a close fight. Whittaker's a much more kick-heavy guy, more of a kickboxer, whereas I look at Calvin as a little bit more of a boxer. And I think Calvin's definitely a better boxer than Whittaker is. With the kicking and the height and the reach advantage, it becomes very close on the feet. I don't actually know who I'd edge on the feet, but as I said, I think if Whittaker gets in any kind of danger and he goes to wrestling, that's a huge problem for Kelvin that maybe he's prepared for a little bit, but I think Whittaker could just grind him out, because I do not see him stuffing the takedowns that Whittaker has, as I said before, that nobody's talking about. Whittaker is just an unreal wrestler, and nobody seems to be talking about it. The one concern with Whittaker here, a lot of people are saying like all the damage from fighting that big old soldier of steroids, and he got knocked down and his chin's weaker. That just happens with fighting. Like, you're going to get knocked down eventually. Your chin's going to deteriorate fight by fight. I'm not that worried about that. What I'm really worried about is limbs. Like, he's broken his hand quite a few times, so there's a little bit of worry there. But the bigger worry for me is his knee. Since hyperextending it, and apparently he had injuries to one of his two knees, left or right, I can't remember, previous to the first Yoel fight. So if he's a little bit gingerly on that knee or can't use it the same way as before, that could be problematic, especially with footwork and whatnot, especially if he hurts it in the fight, because this guy gets hurt every single fight, which just kind of shows how badass he is. I see Whittaker winning this fight. Whittaker is going to be my pick for this fight. And again, the X factor, wrestling, people aren't talking about it. He's unreal. So we'll see if he uses it. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't use it, but I think it's in his back pocket if he gets endangered. So that's it for my picks for this card. My bets are going to be on Adesanya as well as Kang. If you're looking for my exact bets, they're going to be on Bet MMA Tips. That's a third-party track website, and all my picks are going to be up on there. If you're looking for my profile on the website, it's in the description down below. My favorite underdog plays for this card are going to be Rani Yahya, Dung Young Ma, as well as Austin Arnett. The reason for Austin Arnett is simply that value that I was talking about earlier. I do not believe he should be plus 265. If he's right in the head, if he's good to go mentally, I think this is a very winnable fight for him. So that's it, and until next time, I'm out.